agenda in the chat, and we will get started right away. Please put your name in the attendees section if you haven't already, just 'cause that will let us know if you've been here or if you missed this particular meeting, if there's something that we need to let you know about that touches on anything that you're doing. Let's take a quick look at the agenda for about 30 seconds. Let me know if there's anything that you want to add. It's pretty tight. And let me know if there's anything you want to add, remove, modify, or anything like that. So we'll spend about 30 seconds of that.
I'll add a couple things in the OKD, the upcoming events.
Christian, it'd be nice if you would say a few things about what's been going on, because I see there's been quite a lot of updates going into the repos, so it'd just be interesting for an update on that. I don't know whether you'll do it as part of the OKD update or.
Absolutely. I think I'll just get started with the release update real quick. So Vadim cut a new release 10 days ago. And that's really all I can say on that right now. We have been working a lot on Tekton pipelines. So there is in the OKD project, there are now 3 pipeline repositories. One is the OKD CentOS 9 rebuild repository. We might rename that later. Which is essentially a pipeline for building entirely rebuilding your own payload. And currently that is with CentOS 9, but that pipeline should also be usable to create your own Fedora-based payloads, or if you're into any other RPM-based distro, you can probably use those too. Would be interesting to see a SUSE build or something. So that is essentially what that repository is used for. We have one of my colleagues from the multi-arch team working on getting that to work with ARM. So we'll probably, because our internal PROW system won't be ready for ARM releases quite some time, we might be able to also get it to work, kind of, but we won't be able to have full multi-arch manifested payloads in PRO for some time. So this is a stretch goal for the OKD CentOS 9 rebuild pipeline. We'll be following, we'll be kind of focusing on that later this year. Right now, what we're working on is, or mostly working on, is the OKD COSA pipeline, which is a pipeline to run CoreOS assembler in Tekton on any Kubernetes cluster. So essentially you can use a small kind Kubernetes in Docker or Kubernetes in Podman local cluster, deploy Tekton pipelines on it, and then run that pipeline, and that'll run the CoreOS assembler, which essentially wraps RPM OS tree compose. We're currently still working out the last few kinks there with getting it to do what we want it to do. So we currently have problems mounting in or getting into the compose the OKD RPMs, that is OpenShift client, OpenShift hypercube, which aren't available in a proper YAM repository. So we're creating a local one, and RPM OS tree compose doesn't seem to be very happy with the local RPM repo. Anyways, we'll find a solution for that. I think the best solution for that will be to actually have a publicly hosted YAM repository. So we will be able to use to push into that repository always the latest builds, and then consume from there, just like from any other YAM repository in our RPM OS tree composes. A note for Timothy, we have been able to replace the, what's it called, the RHEL 9 server OSE repository that's still used in the SCOS 9 manifest. We've been able to replace that with, for cryo, and I'm not sure what exactly is in that repository, whether it's just the OpenShift RPMs or also the cryo RPMs. Cryo RPM we can get from Copper now. We have added build automation, RPM build automation for Copper. For Cryo, that means each commit will be built on Copper and each release will be built on Copper too. So we'll be able to pin to a release or just consume the very latest from there. For Cryo and Cry tools, that is on Copper. Cry tools isn't automated yet. It's manually built because we don't have Packet in that GitHub organization. We use the Packet as a service for RPM automation. We do have it for Cryo now, so we'll always get the latest Cryo builds from Copper for now. And then for the OpenShift or OKD RPMs, OpenShift clients and OpenShift Hypercube, we are still looking for a solution. So I think eventually we'll host that somewhere publicly as well, which can then be used also by the SCOS composers if we have a public YAM repo for those. So making great progress there. We are hoping to get the first SCOS build done this week, and then the next steps will be for us to internally set up a release controller in Prow to build release payloads for SCOS or OKD on SCOS. So we won't be using the OKD CentOS 9 rebuild pipeline for that. That has essentially the same purpose as our release controller. But since we need the integration with CI for OKD on SCOS, we will use the internal release controller instead. For anybody interested in building their own payloads, though, take a look at the OKD CentOS 9 rebuild pipeline. And for the time being, we will be using the OKD COSA pipeline to build SCOS itself, the base operating system and the boot images, and also the image that contains the OS tree in the new format, that you can use it to layer your own things on it or even remove things from the base. That is all possible with that new layered images format that RPM OS tree now supports natively. So we can actually simplify our bootstrapping process quite a bit going forward in both OKD on SCOS and OKD on FCOS. There is a third repository, which is the OKD Operator Pipeline, which is also being worked on, and that is essentially for building your own operators or building operators for OKD from any source. So some operators that have sources that are very similar to the template sources, you can just use the pipeline as is. For other operators like the Tecton and OpenShift pipelines operators, we are still working on that to also make that supported, or at least have documented the changes needed to build those operators. We want to use that pipeline on Operate First, with your help from the community, to fill up our operator catalog, really, to do builds of all kinds of operators and release them to OKD through the operator hub. But we have to build the operator bundle somewhere, and this Tecton pipeline really is the place. We have also added a couple of folks to the and I'm kind of closing the loop. We're now on Operate First with that, and some of you folks should have gotten access already. You should have access to the OKD Working Group namespace on Operate First, and feel free to mess around there, deploy your things. Try not to overwrite anything anybody else has done, but if you need another namespace, you can essentially open a repository creating one for you in the Operate First apps repo, and then just put yourself as the owner in there. You're already part of the organization if I've added you to the team list, and I will be adding more people to the team list once we hand over. So we're currently doing our OKD COSA work in a separate namespace, and once we are confident that it works, we will hand it over to the working group and host it in the working group namespace there as well. And then we'll probably also enforce some kind of Git ops so that manual changes are corrected or overridden by the Git state, essentially enforced that way. Yeah, so a lot going on. We want to deliver this in 2 weeks, at the latest in 4 weeks. So yeah, stay tuned. There's a lot coming.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, I'm just going to say this out loud. It's a big paradigm shift for the OKD Working Group too. And I just want to acknowledge that and all the work that everybody's going into, because it becomes. I feel like I should do a song about it. It's all about the pipelines now, and open sourcing the templates for the pipelines for people to do their own OKD builds on whatever they want. And this is the first foray into using the Operate First platform. And so as we work out the kinks on this, it will really kind of change the nature of what we do in the working group and what we're able to do in the working group, from custom OKD builds to maybe there's going to be another Core OS out there from somebody else who might want to build it using some of these things. So there's going to be a bit of education, and that's kind of where we're going to have to talk about how we educate the entire OKD community about these streams of work that they can do. So it's moving pretty quick, and that one of the things that I'd like to do is, once we have an MVP, give everybody maybe 2 weeks, and then have sort of another sort of a deployment and testing summit, and get everybody's feedback on that. I might call it a hackathon, but just sort of a hosted summit for everybody just to talk about what it was and what's missing, what works and what didn't, and what, and get an overview from you on it. So, but the more education we can do, the better.
Yeah, and Christian, I think it'd be quite interesting. How do we actually kick off a community sort of effort to actually create that operator catalog? Because I think that's one thing. As Dan said, this is a new sort of era for us, where potentially we want community members and Red Hatters to actually come and work, which means it's probably outside of the traditional Red Hat working environment. But how do we do that? Do we arrange a convenient time where we just have a kickoff call, or do we try and do it all virtually through a repo? I'm not sure how we do this, but I'm keen to actually get that, at least the basics of the catalog there, so we can then start allowing people to build out. But until we have anything, and then obviously the big question is, how do we push it into the OKD build so it gets there as part of the release? I have no idea how that bit works, but any thoughts on how we move this forward as a community? Because obviously we're trying to take work away from you, not give you more work.
So the operator pipeline is for optional operators that go through Operator Hub. And I think we will just be reusing, we actually have this new OKD catalog that we haven't been using. We can use that, I think, for the OKD Working Group builds. And then we just add a second catalog source to our default sources. And it should be enabled by default. We then just have to document the process, and I think maybe a video demo, a recording of how that works, might be a good way to start this, where we just pick one operator, kind of build it in the pipeline, and the pipeline should also then essentially include a step to release it, to push it to Quay, and maybe even to open a PR on the Operator Hub repo to kind of update or add the operator. And I haven't been really focusing on that, but I know that Luigi, who's here today, he has actually, with Shireen, a colleague of ours, he has contributed the operator pipeline, and they are both on the CFE team, which will, once we get past this MVP stage with the OKD on SCOS phase, they will actually, as a team, be taking over the release engineering for all of OKD. So that includes OKD on FCOS, OKD on SCOS, and possibly also operator releases. So I think they are just interested in having these operators being built, not necessarily building them themselves. But so I think Luigi and the team, once we are kind of in a place where we say this is production ready, hopefully I can convince Luigi and the team to record a demo of how it's done and what the process should be. It should really all be build it yourself, push it into a registry, and then use GitOps to get that release or that bundle added to the operator catalog. So really, it should be something you should be able to do from the command line, or automate to a great extent. And yeah, hopefully we'll get a video recording of how that works, and we can publicize it that way. And obviously, I'm also always happy to have a kind of a hackathon or a kickoff meeting where we do a live session on this.
If we get the videos recorded, then we can transcribe them and annotate them and turn them into, I hesitate to use the word guides, but whatever Brian wants to call them for documentation, and get that into the base. I know videoing is easiest to get the content out of the engineer's mouth, and then we can shapeshift it in the docs group.
So, any other questions or comments for what Christian covered? That was a lot.
Yeah. Is anybody as excited as I am about this? Because it really opens up a huge universe for us. I'm pretty
Another
stoked.
thing I wanted to mention, we want to also release those Tecton pipelines or their definitions to the Tecton Hub, which is another, I think, very neat platform to share things, just so we get the most out of it and we bring it to as many people as we can. And obviously, yeah, that is to encourage anybody to run the pipeline themselves, tinker with it, change things up, test things, and eventually contribute back to our working group. So yeah, I'm really excited about this effort, and it really is a lot right now. We have big changes coming in OKD on FCOS with the introduction of layered images. We have a new OKD on SCOS flavor. Dream, I think I think it's a release stream. I'm not sure what the word will be eventually, but yeah. And then we obviously want to really build up our story for the OKD catalogs, for the OKD operator catalog, and really make that a success. And all of it, I think, as a base tool going forward, will very much focus on Tecton to run the things in pipelines and have. Just because we get a lot from that framework, it's just really nice to use, and it feels like it gives us all the possibilities we need to build these things. Obviously, there's always all contributions are welcome if you have another tool running it. And I'm looking forward to this. So any feedback obviously is really welcome, and any help and contribution.
Christian, where do you think the best place for feedback would be? What's the best place for people to give targeted feedback on these things?
So each of the pipelines has its own repository. I think opening an issue there, or even better, a pull request, is probably the best. Then we also have migrated the OKD repository over to the OKD project GitHub org now. So that still is a great place as a kind of general issue tracker from where we can then triage and go into move it to the right place. Also the chat still are OpenShift users, and I think we should definitely bridge that with the Matrix panel as soon as possible. I haven't been able to look into that yet, but that is something I still have on the list for later this year. So hopefully things are a bit more kind of coming together, not splintering the community into too many channels. So I
Yeah.
think the OKD repository, and especially in general, the OKD project on GitHub now should be the main focal point.
Yeah, and as Brian pointed out, that we want to start blogging about sort of the status of releases and the status of the build process and things like that. So, this is something the community development team had been talking about, and so we'll probably be reaching out to you either to vet something that we've written or to maybe crowdsource a document of some kind, so that we can get something out there sooner than later. Because right now, unless someone watches these meetings, they're not really going to know about it. They're not really going to know what's happening. So all right.
I did line up Luigi and a few other folks to start doing some videos too. So we'll do that. And El Michael, who just showed up too, is Mike McEwen is up for another video. So I'm going to start making more short videos to express our interest in these new topics, and you can associate them with the blogs.
All right, let's move on to Community Development Group. Brian, take it away.
Okay, you skipped Timothy, so just make sure you put him after me as well.
Oh, whoops! I'm sorry. You're right. No. Let's Timothy. Sorry, Timothy. Yeah, well, because I move things around, and actually, let me ask the group this: does it make more sense to have the community development after sort of the Red Hatters and the folks? Like, I feel like it does make sense more to let the folks who are more guests for external stuff to be able to give their updates, and then we do community development after. Does that make sense moving forward? Yes? No? Yes?
Yes, to me,
okay.
To me it does.
Okay, great. Okay, Timothy, go ahead.
Okay, I promise I'll be quick.
No. Yeah, take all the time you need.
All right, so I have just a couple of small updates. On the FCOS side, we have done two changes that might impact OKD, not impact that much, but like we have visible change for OKD. The first one is that we've landed support for setting a password in the group bootloader. Right now, this is not supported by the MCO, so that would work only on first boot if you set up the right thing. It should be working with butane, so you should be able to generate the manifest and do that work. I'm not sure how much it has been tested with OKD yet, but it should work with FCOS. So if you get a new version enough of Fedora CoreOS as part of OKD, you would get that. And so yeah, just for the first installs, you cannot do that for updates yet as part of the MCO. The second item is about the printk, the kernel output level on the console. So by default, we had a reasonably verbose kernel output level, and so if you had a local server with a lot of containers at launch and see that, it could get slowed down by the output on the console. You would get a lot of output on the console, for most servers that's not really useful. So we've lowered the output. So if you see less output on consoles, that's okay, because it's a fix there. It does that after the system has booted. So at the beginning, you will still get full output for debug if you have any issues, and then once the system is booted, the output is switched. And so that's for the Fedora CoreOS side of things. I should maybe paste both of those with FCOS to make it clear. I'll do just that. On the SCOS side of things, so we're still working on documentations, having all the test fix-ups and things like that, all test fixes. So that's still work in progress. We're moving progressively. We've added more supporting COSA to make things easier to work on SCOS, and hopefully at some point we can have you like a quick, short, and sweet document to help folks get started on SCOS development. And yeah, so we're still pending all of this is still pending the fact that we have all the packages available. We are very close now. We still have the cryo we will have soon, as Christian said. We'll have pre-tools and OpenShift, Hypercube and OC soon too. And once we have all of that, we're good to go, and we will let you play with CentOS Stream Chorus as you see fit. And that's it for me.
Fantastic. Any questions or comments or feedback, overall feedback for Timothy regarding FCOS and SCOS?
Just real quick from me, I will, Timothy, I will reach out to you regarding cryo if you don't have a different solution. And we are definitely planning on upstreaming all the changes we do downstream in the OKD COSA pipeline repository currently back into the OS repo. Just a heads up. So yeah, I'll be opening PRs as we go, unless obviously you need them first.
No, that's good. That's good. Once you have the changes, like the repos or something like that, we can start using them in our pipeline too, so that we test against those. Right now we test against, so for clarity, right now we test against the RHEL builds of those packages, so the one that are going into OpenShift. So those are real internal, well, at least until they are released, so we cannot like use that to let everybody from the community use that. So we want to make sure that once we say, okay, you can use it with only fully public packages. So that's why we're waiting on that. And once we'll have that, then essentially folks will be fully able to like see everything, change the source, everything, fix things wherever they need to be fixed, because right now those are still missing.
So cryo and cry tools are on corporate. They essentially are available, and I'll PR those shortly. And then for OpenShift clients and OpenShift Hypercube, we'll have to find some solution. They are also public, but they are currently wrapped in the artifacts container. And in order to pull them out of there, we just and make them consumable with RPM-OS tree compose and then CoreOS assembler, we will have to figure out something creative. But we will come to that eventually too.
All right. Any other questions or comments or feedback on our updates there? All right. Let's move on now to the community development updates. Brian Ennis.
Okay, so we had our meeting last week. I think the first thing to point out is that the OKD main repo has moved. It's moved from the OpenShift to the OKD project organization. Currently, the redirects will work. So if you try and go to OpenShift OKD, you will be bounced into the OKD project. I've just assigned me a task now to go and update all the documents and all the links to the OpenShift OKD, to where we raise issues and where we start discussions. So I'll be doing that this week to get that done. The other repo, I'm still looking at Diane to try and pull together the people that need to coordinate the DNS entries to actually move the okd.io repo. That is the last thing that we have to do to get into the OKD project. So hopefully we can get that sorted.
So it's not that I had Christian and Vadim had put in a request to Red Hat IT to make that move. Christian, is there any status on that?
I think that was the OKD repository move.
That was the repository move. Yeah.
Okay.
There might be a separate request for DNS related things, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay. I had combined the two in my head. I will see what I can do to get them, Will Gordon, to redo that for me now, because now I think we can step up and do that.
Yeah, it would be great if we could tackle that sooner than later, because it would be nice to get some OKD-based email addresses too. So get those MX records changed. We can use an external service like Google. I am willing to donate one of my mail servers, but it would be good to get some OKD email addresses so that people can actually, members of the community, et cetera, can actually email like an OKD address for volunteering, or for, you know what I mean, like volunteering at okdproject.org, or, whatever we want to do. So, yeah, keep us posted on that for sure.
Okay.
All right, Brian, back to you.
Okay, so we are using a project board. I put a link in there. It's github.com okd-project. And if you go to the project section, we have a project planning board. That's where everything we want to start doing. So we're removing tasks from the HackMD, and everything should now be moved onto the planning board. So this is where we wanted to have the master plan. We've got a number of things in progress. There's some things in ready. So if anybody feels like volunteering and getting their hands dirty, go grab something, assign yourself in ready. There's a couple of things in the backlog, and then the OKD community group, development group, will actually look at the new items and assign them and sort them each time they meet. So there hasn't been a lot of change. Mike did inform us that the review of the guide section, there's a group internally within Red Hat looking to create some experiences, getting started experiences, which will probably feed into that guide section. So I've been holding off doing a major reorg of that until I know a little bit more about what they want to produce and if they can do that. We also have a volunteer that someone identified that they've written some documentation around automation with Terraform, which I think is really useful. That we want to sort of, I think that's the sort of guide that we want to put in there, where people have shown how they've automated it with the various platforms. I don't think there's really much more to say than we now have the board running, and we're looking for volunteers to actually move the cards from left to right. So please help us volunteer. The other thing that we did talk about in the community group was about a recruitment drive. So anytime anybody speaks at an event, whether it's KubeCon or our meetup, if you could include an invite to come join our community as part of any OKD talk, that would be really, really useful. I think that's about it. Yep, and that's it from me.
Oh, and one other thing is we're going to collate the results of the survey, and then have a discussion about it once we can tease some data out of that. There's a fair amount of responses to it. Okay, any questions, comments, feedback on the community development meeting report? All right, I'm really excited about where that's going and excited about the volunteers that we've had showing up. I've been swamped with some internal things the past couple of weeks, but that is resolving itself, and we'll be reaching out to a couple of the folks that have volunteered and starting to sort of bootstrap them into the process. And all right, let's see, Diane, did you want to reference, you've got some events coming up that you wanted us to know about?
Yeah, so in that community outreach vein, we're going to KubeCon in October in Detroit, and I've tapped both Jamie, myself, and Mike McEwen, who's on the call, to go on stage at the Commons event, which is the day 0 of KubeCon. And I've booked a 3-hour room, including lunch, on the 25th for an OKD working group, face-to-face, meet and greet, whatever we want to call it. And just prior to that is going to be the operator framework team is going to be doing a hands-on workshop And what we're going to then ask is all the operator framework people to come to the OKD working group meeting so that we could talk about the future of operators and things, and get some of our questions answered and do some cross-pollination there. So if you can get yourselves to Detroit, let me know, or let Jamie know, and we will figure out how to incorporate you and make sure you can get there. You do not need a full pass to KubeCon to come to the Commons gathering. It is co-located event, but it is at the Weston Book Cadillac on the 25th, and because it is off-site from the campus, the convention center, you don't need a KubeCon pass, so you don't have to spend the $1,500 to get in. So so we can do some outreach to the local meetups and other folks too as well, to come. The price point is a little high and pricey for some folks. And then the only other thing I have is, as soon as Luigi and Christian tell me we have an MVP, probably we'll kick off and pick a date to do that feedback testing and deployment summit hackathon on the OKD SCOS thing. So I'm just waiting patiently, Luigi and Christian, and we'll start.
Yeah, we'll do our best. We'll do our best.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, we're going to end a little bit early today. Nothing wrong with that. Any last minute thoughts that folks want to share with the group before we disband for the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to respond to Mike's note in the chat about talking with Dennis. I saw that note earlier, and yeah, whatever time works for you, Fridays are best to start recording videos. I think we could just have a standing session on Friday mornings, West Coast time. And Christian, when you get ready to do a video, or Luigi does, we can just knock them out of the ballpark. I'm ready and waiting.
Fantastic.
And then we can churn those into blogs and keep Brian and the content people happy.
Thanks so much, folks, for showing up and doing the work that makes this great community so vibrant and so many great things happening. If you want, come to the OKD Community Development Meeting, which is same time, same channel next week. And either way, we'll see you in 2 weeks for this meeting. Thanks.